Matthew is warmest welcome to the Genius Leadership Podcast.
Thank you.
All right, I'll start with one of you. Ines, how about you? You start. Can you introduce to our listeners, who are you? What do you think it's important for us to understand about your background for the conversation?
So I'm Iris. I'm the co-founder of Evolytes, which is a math learning platform. My route to the co-founder of a math educational technology platform is quite odd, and sometimes people think you always go a straight route, but I haven't been there. So my background is in design. I've done business. I did some human geography. I did some different types of studies who weren't directly linked to this. Did start working for big companies, worked as, project manager, I ended up as a sales director by the time that I met Mathieu and heard about his research. And I thought it was just such a phenomenal thing, what he'd seen in the results that he got. I think he's going to tell you a bit more about it later. But I just thought it was so phenomenal that I really wanted to get it out to the students. I didn't want it to end up as a research paper in some drawer somewhere that maybe somebody would pick up and do some further research on, but nobody would really utilize. So I because I had started my own company who didn't take further, but I'd taken part in some, business competitions and stuff. So I urged him to do that. And we did that together. And the rest is history. We ended up founding the company together. Me joining a bit later on, but full time. But it's been an adventure, really.
And you've joined in 2018, so 6 years ago.
I did, yeah. It's been 6 years. It's amazing.
Time flies, so
right.
All right. Thanks for the introductions. How about you, Matthew?
Yeah, so actually, Evolytes started out, as Iris mentioned, through my interdisciplinary research in psychology and software engineering. I have a long history with entrepreneurship, if you will, and I have I think Edith and I both have like a weird story with education. You could say we were overachiever and misfits at the same time. So we went our own ways, and I was
sorry to interrupt you, but we actually both skipped a grade in the regular education system. So, which is a funny story.
Yeah, it's one of those things that we have in common. She skipped an entire year. I skipped one semester, kind of middle of nowhere. But yeah, so I was doing interdisciplinary research in the Aperio program at the Reykjavik University, which is the first program of its kind, which is completely individualized. So it was centered around the student. So I could do, at a bachelor's degree level, I could do doctorate level research studies. So wow. I was looking at reinforcement theory. How do we get behavioral curves that can change behaviors, and how does that apply to games, video games specifically? Everybody will tell you that it's been well researched, and if you look at if you looked at the literature at the time, that was not the case. Really, not really. It was mostly studies on virtual, gambling machines. Don't really apply anymore. Video games are much more complex than that. And psychology would tell you that humans and kids do not operate like pigeons and dogs. That's kind of where it started. So I did that for 4 years. Come home, my sister is struggling with math, just like I had 10 years or 15 years prior. I'm the oldest of 5, so she was 4th in line. She didn't get the same kind of support as I did, being the oldest. So I started tutoring her, and I realized I could use all of these studies that I'd been conducting on the different behavioral patterns, how you can change behavioral curves to change behavior or get engagement in its essence. And created a simple game to begin with to see if I could really engage students to practice math. Because at the end of the day, math is like running a marathon. If you never get the practice, and especially at those youngest ages, he was in 3rd grade at the time. You're not going to be running 20K if you've never run 1K in your life. And math is also like a muscle. If you don't practice it, you're going to lose part of your edge, right? So that's where it started, and worked very well with my sister. So I went to her teachers and said, hey, can I do a study with your class? I know exactly what you're studying at this point in time. I've tried this with my sister. let's just try it. And we got some phenomenal results. We saw that students were answering 4 times more on average in their own free time by their own volition than they did in school. Students with learning disabilities, or students that were proportionally below average in proficiency, showed the greatest growth, or an 8-fold increase on average. We had kids answering up to 1,200 questions in their own free time. So that's kind of where this all started. And then we realized the problems and issues we're facing in education, especially math. It's a global problem. There's a lot more we could do. So we ended up creating a comprehensive platform with individualized content based on psychological principles. We even incorporated books, which Edith added in there, coming from somewhat of a teacher background, her mother being a teacher.
It was actually hilarious when I pitched the idea, because I was looking for us. I had been in sales, I'd been in marketing, so I knew, like, even though you have the best product, if it's the people don't feel it's different, they don't feel like it's so there's some edgy thing to it. They won't buy it. They will just continue using what they're used to. So I pitched this idea because I saw that nobody was doing it, but this is like the bridge between the traditional, schooling and then the digital world, which we are creating. And he looked at me like I was honestly going nuts. Are you kidding?
My thought was, how am I going to pitch a book to an investor? Like, that makes no sense. But hey, I listened in the end.
Yeah.
How did you persuade him, leaders?
Sorry?
How did you persuade him to get there?
I originally pitched the idea, and then I started looking at different ways of doing it, and we talked back and forth about it, and I was always bringing it up. I think it's a great idea. And like you said, I come from a teacher's background. So my mom is a teacher, and I was raised, when I finished school, it was before her, and I just spent the time with her, and I was in the teacher's lounge and everything. So that's my childhood. And so I kept up, and I know a lot of teachers. So I had pitched the ideas to them, and they were like saying, "Oh, that would be great. That would be awesome." So I continued, sort of battering about it and saying, "I think it's a really, really good bridge. I think it would be really good, because then it would be different. We would have something that's really different."
And so we, in the end, Edith kept pushing the agenda. We're a very diverse team. We're actually 5 or 6 co-founders, because there's some people that came and left, but we have our illustrator down in Mexico, Edith. We had Jonas, who started the company. He was our game designer. He left to go study, but Sigge joined us instead. And we have Gudberg also, who is our a math expert or curriculum expert. So we have a very diverse team, different ages, and a lot of different opinions, to put it that way. This is just one example. But in the end, with all of the pushing and sometimes, I wouldn't say screaming, but arguments, there are a lot of arguments in the office between
discussions, but it isn't arguments.
Yeah, heated discussions. We call it heated discussions, but some of our colleagues call it arguments. Anyway, what we usually always end up with is somewhat of a middle ground. And what we managed to do with our books is we managed to make them very unique. So when you see our content, you won't think of math. You will just see a brand and a game that the children like. So we're like Pokemon in Iceland. So if you go to a school that has Evolytes, they're going to be playing as Evolytes, not as Pokemon.
It is actually hilarious. One of our co-founders, he goes and does these children's introductions. So he'll go and talk to students and introduce like the new things that are coming in the game and the adventure world part. And he was shopping the other day in Smauralin, and he's just walking there with his family, and a child comes running. Oh my God!
You became a bit of a celebrity there among your clients. That's amazing. That's
Yeah. And we found a way to integrate the books with the game itself, so that we could generalize the positive stimuli from the video games over to the books, so that students would actually want to learn new concepts. They would get rewards in the game for finishing their chapters, and the teachers could see in real time what they're doing in the books as well. So it was kind of very innovative. And I think it's because we're very diverse, we have different ideas, and we never agree, but we usually find some middle ground that nobody else has.
I actually think that is important. And I think the strength of our company is the diverse team, because and the fact that like nobody caves in. So we are always discussing different methods. And if you come up with an idea that you think works and you need to go back because it isn't well received to begin with, and you need to research it better, and you need to have better like reasons why you want to do it, and then you come back with the idea, you will always get a better product at the end than if you would just originally go with the thing that you thought was best. Because it's never going to be the best thing if you don't really think hard on it,
Yeah, and try it out. Try it, test your thesis out. But yeah, sometimes we're like, yeah, okay, we're never going to know. We're just going to have to try it.
I'll want to tap on more into the diversity and how you actually manage it, because it can be a blessing and a curse, or a curse, depending on how you build the company and the culture around it. But I actually would just a small detail that got stuck with me. Mathieu, when you introduced the game to the teachers of your sister's class, and you said some kids answered 1,200 questions. How do you design the game? Like, what was the scope of that first, like, MVP, so to say? How many questions did you have? How did you create them? Did you code them all in there yourself? What was going on with you?
Yeah, so it was supposed to be 2 months long study. It was done with our class. So I had created these generators that generate questions based on parameters. And all of our system is built like that, but in a simplified way, if you will. So we started with complex arithmetic, started doing multiplication, division, and there were a couple of other minor subjects. But then we had a backend hook to all of that. So I saw one student answered 1,200 questions. The average was around 450. Yeah, it was kind of crazy. So all of the students finished all of the content in under 4 weeks.
Wow.
So the study was, some of them did it in 2 weeks. So I was like, okay. We designed it in such a way that it looked very much and interacted a lot like the old Pokemon games because of how the reinforcement schedules worked. That was kind of where we started. We went down that road a little bit longer and realized it didn't scale very well. We got a lot of activity in the beginning, but we didn't get the longevity, if you will. So we couldn't maintain the same rate of responding, as we call it in behavioral psychology. So we actually, what it was, a year and a half in, 2 years in, where we scrapped all of the game elements that we've created and we started from scratch. Not completely from scratch. There was a lot of things we could reuse, but yeah. So that was kind of the scope, and that's where we started. And we've done numerous studies since. And it was always about testing it out, testing it very, very close to your users. Since the beginning, we have a very good relationship with all of the schools that we support. So, if they have a problem, I'll know on my phone, or someone on the team, and we're going to get a call. We're going to know.
That's been fantastic. Having your clients actually tell you what's going on, and having a good relationship to begin with your first clients is so important, because if you don't know about the problem and then people just quit, using your product, then you can't fix it. And we've been very lucky with the teachers being really learning that they can call us, and we will reply, and we will try and fix it as soon as possible. And generally, we will manage to fix it within a day. And that like teaching our clientele that is something that they should do, and that we are always happy with. They're always like, thank you for doing that. Thank you for telling us about it. Has been largely the reasons why we've managed to like fine tune our product very well, fit the market.
I actually want to tap into that because I recently had an interview with Sigge, the founder of East Orca here. So there's the EV charging stations around the country. And he was saying that he has seen this evolution of the client feedback. So in the beginning, when it just started, it was pretty much like there was no one else doing that, what they were doing. So the calls were like, "Hi, I just wanted to tell you there is a problem with this charger here. But I hope I'm not disturbing you. And like, you're doing a great job. Keep going," and so on and so forth. And then the second stage was like, "This charger doesn't work. I hate you. Fix it now." And then the third stage of this evolution was like, people just don't call anymore, because if it doesn't work, they just don't bother and they go to the next charger. And he was saying like, once I started getting that second kind of calls, I knew that we were onto something, that we have created something that is like, there is a healthy competition. We're growing the infrastructure. So people feel like they're entitled to anything. And that means that they are putting their demands there, they're voicing themselves. So I want to know about you, like how has the journey been for you over like now 6-7 years? Did you see the change of the customer feedback format or anything?
That's a very good one. I think I'm going to start with this. Edith can lead on it. We have because we're an EdTech and GDPR is very complicated. We're servicing the youngest students. So think first grade to fifth grade, even kindergarten. And we can't use analytics like most digital tools. We can build our own, but it's not worth the hassle often. So we don't have any analytics in Europe. We have it elsewhere. But just to say that because of that, we also know that in order for our product to be implemented, we need to be very close to our users. The teachers need to be comfortable with the product and the students as well. And I think our approach in the implementation process is the key to our success. I mean, we guide them very well through how to use it, and we're always there if there's an issue. But there has been some change because in the early days, if there was a minor issue, we would get 1 or 2 phone calls. That's changed a little bit. I think Edith knows more about that than me. I tend to be the fixer. Adrian and Edith take those hot phone calls if they arrive.
Yeah, so we did, because they do email us and they do call us. And then, like you said, it was to begin with just a couple of them. But now once we ran into our service, not because of our fault, but our service froze so that the game didn't work during peak hours in the school. And then honestly, everything went off, the email box filled. And I mean, that was for us as well, the feeling, it was a very nice feeling that we know that everybody is using it and we know that everybody's going to contact, So that was fantastic. I think we haven't hit what he was explaining, like people being angry, but I think it's also because we are in a very peculiar market in Iceland. So the EdTech market is very small in Iceland. It's a handful of products, not due to a lack of entrepreneurs in Iceland wanting to go into that tech field, but because we have a government-run monopoly on the educational material. That being said, teachers are just so happy that they can use our product that they wouldn't complain like that. They're just, please continue to just do what you do. So I think that minimizes that, the angry caller. I had some calling me during weekends because we do have clientele like B2C clients whom are a bit on that edge. But I don't know. I think it's always fantastic that people do it, and you can always turn because as soon as they realize you're actually happy to take the call, even though they're angry to begin with, because we are always really happy. They realize that the voice turns and they're just trying to explain and trying to us taking the feedback correctly so we can fix it. So I think it's also how you take the call. You really need to in your heart be happy that they're doing it.
I have a very good example. The B2C is a little bit different. There we're likelier to get someone that's angry, didn't realize it was a subscription, the traditional things, which is fine. We usually just reimburse if there's no usage. But once we had a phone call, somebody was not happy. They had been charged and they said they didn't use it anymore. But I said, hey, your son is using it. He's been using it actually quite a lot. She's like, oh, really? Okay, in that case, I just want to buy another book. And I was like, okay, I mean, fantastic. So, but also knowing as Edith said, we work with teachers and the level of service they are used to in Iceland is honestly abysmal. If they have a problem with a book or something, there's no one they can call. They can send a complaint that it might be taken into account a year or 2 from now. I mean, we have books that are 12, 13 years old that still have the same printing errors in them.
So print like a page with the incorrectness of the book.
Yeah, with the corrections.
But don't fix it in the book,
Yeah.
So for the next edition, they just add the page of these are the things that are wrong.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is kind of strange. But not all of the books, but some of them. And interestingly, when they send us the next printing batch, it'll be fixed. Unless, So I think that's also kind of different, and they're not used to just getting usually they send emails or whatever. If they send us an email, we'll call them right away or leave a note so that they can contact us right away.
It's actually funny. Sometimes we get like, oh, I didn't think you would reply.
Why did you even write that?
Yeah, so we tend to reply within an hour or two, and whatever issue it is, fix it within a day or two, unless it's a bigger issue, like if you've accidentally deleted 3 or 4 students and we need to go for backups and all of that. So, I think that level of service is really something that is important, especially to your first clients. So they will also be, because it's, there were some bugs, there were some things we hit along the road, and just the fact that you had good service and you could give them a reason for what's happening, they were more lenient in the early days. So we've lost 2 or 3 clients since the start, and they all came back. So just because we just couldn't manage to either develop content, I mean, teachers changed, teaching method, we're not for everyone, but so I think that level of service really helps.
And just for understanding of the scale, how many schools and pupils are you, or active users are you serving right now, and how many are you on the team?
Okay, so I can take the pupil number. So we have 80% of all schools in Iceland. So it's around 7,000 students, give or take. Don't know, that was the last numbers. They've probably increased. We have about, usually around any time, we have about 500, 600 consumers. They fluctuate, but they're somewhere in that range. Then we do have a lot of initiatives globally. So India, some of the pilots that we have going there and contracts are in the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of students. Latin America, it's in the we have a contract for over 170,000 students. So we've hit some big population numbers. We're also in the USA and UK, and also starting Middle East. We have a very different strategy on that part.
Right.
But yeah, we are not many. We're 7, I think.
Yes.
Right now, like full time. We have some as well salespeople around the world that we're more commission based. So it is. I mean, it's a heavy workflow, but that's how we like it. We like to be busy. So it's all of our staff jump into any or employees and co-founders. They all can jump into whatever situation you need. So we really emphasize when we're choosing people, and the people who stick with us or people who don't mind, like this is what I do. And then if this happens, then I'll jump into that. And I think it's very important that we keep that level of, how do you say, agility or
agility.
Agility.
And also do note that as the core team itself, we could say we're 7. Then we do rely on highly specialized people in some areas that are on a freelance basis or on a need basis, if you will. So we have several such individuals, and then we have, as Idris mentioned, sales people, and we're not just saying just some salesperson, because our business is a relationship-based business. So we have people that have established relationships with the clients we are pursuing in all of the geographies I mentioned. So we're in Latin America in 5 or 6 different countries there, Brazil being the biggest. USA is very nuanced, so every state is a country if you really think about it. So we have a more state-focused approach there. We've got a person in India as well, and some in the Middle East. And, we're testing people out in a couple of other places as well. So, hard to put a full number, but, the people that can jump into anything that are really part of the core team, 7.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I just wanted to specify or clarify that, because for you students listening, here is the level of the ambition of the whole team and the whole company. And I guess that it goes back to mission. You want to make a change in the education, and that requires your commitment, and it requires you to be on top of your toes for really bringing the product and the service to people who will be using it and who will stick to it, right? So just the level of this commitment and keeping the priorities straight. The teachers are the ones who are bringing this product to the kids. They are the ones who can help us make a difference in the education system. We want them to be happy. we want the service to serve them and create value for them. This is front and center for the whole team. Whenever our tasks are for the day, if there is a request coming in, that goes on top of the list. And I think it's so easy for entrepreneurs to forget the client among all the other things that are there. That I just really want to emphasize how you were doing it, and then I want to emphasize the fact that you're doing it, and really appreciate that fact. And then I want to ask, how are you doing it? How do you build the culture? How do you talk within the team to keep the customer front and center?
So I think this kind of happened naturally for us, in the sense that if you go a little bit around our story, so we were B2C focused. COVID hit. We lived in Paris. We were going to launch in France, being one of the most powerful consumer markets in Europe. Moved during COVID, do a soft launch in B2C in Iceland just to test the product out. The schools come our way. And then we hit a lot of walls in the sense that, a video game, if you give a teacher a video game, they don't necessarily know how to use it. And we have this traditional case that the buyer, user, and our end user are three different people. And I think there were a lot of things that we had to learn. And we're actually seeing now that everything that we have learned is generalizable into other countries, more or less. So we've developed this entire methodology of how we implement and how we interact with our customers. You want to talk a little bit about the implementation process and how some interesting things came there?
And like, to answer the question better, I think it's really important, if it weren't for the teachers really wanting our product and seeing the value in it, we wouldn't be a company, we wouldn't exist. So I do think it's that, I think knowing that, you also kind of love them, or you appreciate what they do. And it doesn't matter what changes you want to do in the education system. And I think it's often forgotten, especially policy-wise. Nothing happens without the teachers. Yeah. Nothing happens in the school if the teacher isn't doing it. Yeah. So it is something that is it's crucial that we talk to them. I mean, these are specialists and they give their hearts and soul. Like 99% of them are their heart and soul, So I think it's very important that it's easy when you work with people who are heart and soul in the things that you're doing and they love your product to really service them and getting them there. As for the team, we've always talked about this way. If it weren't for them, we wouldn't exist. We wouldn't have our jobs, and we all love our jobs. We're in it both because we want to change education. We think it's important that we get education to the 21st century because all other sectors have, changed so much with the digital change, with the influx of different digital products, and then the school system sort of fell behind. And it is one of the reasons it stopped sort of serving us, in the sense of you go to school to better your chances in the future. But if the school doesn't reflect even your current situation, how can you say it's for the future? So this is something that is like true to our hearts and crucial for us. And we really do both, this is the passion and the commitment we want from our employees, but we also make sure that what they're doing within the company that isn't serving is something that they enjoy. So we have regular discussions like, where do you want to move? What do you like of the projects that you're doing? Which products do you dislike more? And then we try to have a really healthy balance of the things that you're working on. And if we know it's a project that you have to do and you really hate it, because, you're always going to have some projects like that. We talk about that and we say, we're going to get over this. We're going to finish this together. And then once it's over, we're all going to take, half a day off, or we're going to do something fun together. Because this is so important. If the team isn't happy, if the team isn't heart and soul as well, into what they're doing, then, it doesn't really work. And I think it's very important that you don't forget that, especially your core staff, they need to be able to be happy as family, as happy, as people, So it is something that we also emphasize is that if there's something going on, take a day off, finish the things that you need at home. We know you're going to work it out, you're going to finish the hours later, because if you don't do that, your head is just going to be at the thing that you think you feel like you have to do at home, and not doing the work. So we'd rather have you doing odd hours at the office, finishing your projects. The project get done. I don't really mind when you do it, how you do it. So I think that is also something that has helped us, keeping up this maintain. Yeah.
I want to tap into those things, and then give the word to you, Mathieu. What you said here is, and both parts, right? You talked about the teachers as the heart and soul in the education system, and getting the product actually to fulfill its mission. But also you tapped into the team, where the core team is the heart and soul of the company, and bringing that mission to the teachers and then to the pupils. And I think this is something that GS leaders, you can apply wherever you are in the organization. Quite often in the large organizations, the middle management are those teachers in the education system who are forgotten, who just like stuff things and changes and whatever requirements to adjust to the modern world, to keep pushing back or down to the organization, but they're not supported on how to do it. And if you are in the top leadership position within your company, think about it. Your focus should be on the mid-management. Because if you really provide them with the right support, with the right environment, with the right guidance, and so on and so forth, they will translate that down to the employees on the floor, as conventionally said, in a much healthier way. So really connecting those dots is so important, and it's somehow missed quite often. And you gave 2 examples of how it works, right? With the teachers and with the employees. And the second thing that I want to emphasize, how you said, if something is going on, it's better that you take some break and go and deal with that instead of just trying to force yourself. And you said a couple of hours or half a day, it is, but sometimes it's about 20 minutes just going out for a walk, really, to refresh your brain, to process whatever meeting has been happening right now, whatever conversation you had, whatever it is. And I think we just need to give ourselves and our employees the permission to do that. Much more.
I think it's very, very important. And this is something we also lead by example. If I have projects that I really need to be creative in, I know myself well enough to know that I won't do that in the office. If I show up to the same place I'm always showing up to, and I'm supposed to be doing something out the box, I'm going to struggle with it. So my method is to go somewhere that I think is pretty, somewhere new, some good environment. And then I know the things are going to happen. So I'll tell them, hey, I'm starting the day at the cafe because I'm doing this project and I know I'm going to do it better there. But I think, because I could also just say hey, working at cafe today. Not, but saying, the reasoning behind it and why I'm doing it. And I know it's going to, increase my productivity. Also, maybe, it starts the conversation. Okay, what increases my, productivity? How can I, get the best out of my day? And I think that's very important. Leading by an example, not just saying, "Hey, we're okay with you doing this," but doing it yourself and showing them you're doing it.
I think one thing that we've done well, and we've talked a lot about this as a team, because we're a distributed team, and we've been a distributed team since the beginning. So we're 4 locally at the office in Iceland. Didn't used to be that way. Didn't have an office until 2 years ago. It was, just a waste of resources, if we put it like that, in the beginning. And it's this communication, telling it's not just what, but why. For example, when I need to get programming stuff done, everybody knows I'm not going to be in the office in the morning. But instead of just not showing up at the office, I'll send a message probably at 2, 3, 4 a.m. saying, hey, had a long night, worked on these things, had these problems, probably it's programming. And, we'll be coming in at 10 or 11 a.m. tomorrow. So what often happens, especially in even just mid or, small organizations, is, life happens, but people aren't aware of what you're working on. You might have been working until 3 a.m. You arrive at 10, 11, people are like, why is he coming this late or whatever. This happens in larger organizations, but just so that everyone knows what's going on. And, it just takes a message. just have a shared group, one message, and people know what's going on and what you're working on. And I think also that what we've done well in this area is especially with the teachers, because you can go the route where you have middle managers pushing on teachers, and that's usually the way it goes. We do that a little bit as well, of course, because those are the decision makers that everybody talks about. But if you make the teachers happy, I mean, they're going to push on the decision makers. And one thing that we do as well, and this kind of happened by accident, is if you look at all of our competition, we are probably the only company that puts a lot of emphasis on onboarding the students. We have an entire presentation just to get students. And when Siggy, he's the best at these presentations. He has some acting skills, let's put it that way. He's a character. And when he goes to school, and he usually onboards either a classroom or the entire school in once, I mean, you've got kids, screaming and chanting. They just want to start working with Evolytes. I mean, that's the kind of consensus we build with the students as well. So you could say that we are student and teacher centric. So we start with the students. If we can make the students really happy and show those gains, we can propagate that to the teacher so the teacher can actually feel the difference. If the teacher feels comfortable and likes the technology, that keeps going up.
It's a good approach for a lot of things, bottom up. It always goes better into people than the top down, because you feel like you have to swallow something when it's top down. But when it's natural from bottom up, I think it's very, you always feel better. And the more positive feelings you relate to a product, the more likely you're actually going to want to continue using it, right?
So we focus on, we do the top down just to get with larger organizations to get the technology in. And then we build consensus with a bottom up approach.
Yeah. So you really focus on balance in both ways and really meeting everyone where they are. I want to go back to redoing the whole product. You said 1.5 years, and you just kind of scrapped everything. You reused bits and pieces here and there, but and that was the focus, was to scale the product, the usage of the product, or no, it was to create the stickiness, right? You were saying it.
Yeah, you could say it's stickiness and gameplay, basically. Mm-hmm. So gameplay also goes to how can you scale it? How can you make it manageable long-term? Because gameplay mechanics and content, gameplay content is also something that we have this unique nuance. Usually educational companies we just need more material. We update bi-monthly with game content, and the other month we do bi-monthly updates with educational content. So it's always one after the other. Most other companies don't have that nuance. So 1.5 years in, we tried to mimic a lot of the stylistically what Pokemon did, and it didn't really scale or didn't have the kind of stickiness, or we wanted to make a game that rivals the games children play for fun, and the quality of the games had kind of exceeded what Pokemon did in the early days, and also a little bit with the reinforcement schedules, how we can layer them and really keep them engaged for longer periods of time so that we can have them calculating as much as possible. So we threw everything out the window for that part of the gameplay, and we started from scratch with a new spinal animation technology and looked at other examples of other games and what we liked and the universe that we wanted to create. And that's kind of where we started to focus on more about the universe and the universe itself and the gameplay, because that will translate behavior or calculations from the students.
I think an important thing to note there is that we, so often that people stick to the things that they're used to doing or stick to the thing that they started out doing simply because otherwise you feel like you wasted time, But we've never been afraid of saying, hey, we went down this road, because we are a research-based company. So we research everything. And there's always a reason why we're doing it. And we think it's going to, yield this result. If it doesn't, then it means we just need to find a better idea. And I think it's very important to do that very rapidly so that you're scratching, yes, we did 1.5 years, but we knew that, maintaining what we had already would be more costly than scrapping it and starting from scratch at the time. And I think it's very important to look down the road, not just, hey, what are we doing this month, or how can we fix the problem at hand right now? but to see like, okay, fixing the problem now easily, is it gonna create a future problem? Where is it gonna, if it creates more problems, quick fixing a problem, then it's better to let's just stop. Let's fix this. Let's get this right. Let's get the results that we ultimately set out to really achieve, and not be afraid of it. Sometimes you want to throw your computer out the window,
And that, I guess, it helps to have a co-founder because there usually usually those are kind of, the dips are not at the same time. So one is kind of can pull the other one up, and like if you have more than two people, it's even probably easier. But I want to tap into this, zoom into this moment of throwing everything out the window and building everything from scratch. How did you help yourself to not get stuck in the ways of thinking, in the solutions that you already had for 1.5 years? How did you shift yourself back to blank sheet every time?
So we were quite lucky. So we had still, so the educational part of our content and how we were going to deliver that didn't change. We knew that modality. So here the problem was mostly gameplay, stickiness, how to create a universe that kids like. So what we did is we decided this kind of overnight. So we called Nell, our co-founder and designer in Mexico, which said, hey, we need to start from scratch. We can't do this just over the phone. We need you here. So she flew in. Siggy, who came over instead of Jonas, he still had a part-time job. He took vacation for a week or two, and we just crammed each other in a room for 2 weeks. We use, I learned a very good methodology, design sprints, when I was at Menega by Finnur Palmi. Although we don't follow design sprints to the letter, there are a lot of things to take away from it. So what we started by doing is, what do we like from others? So what do we like from the games that the kids tend to like to play? What technologies can we use? What can we feasibly do? And we had Nell in the room, who was a designer and illustrator. We didn't know how to create the animations with the design software. So Iris and Siggy were banging their heads against the wall for a couple of days trying to figure that out while Nell was creating it for that design software. And we were just in that room until we figured out something that worked. So that took 2 weeks. Then we had to start creating the content and really tapping into the technology and seeing what we could and could not do and where we could cut corners. Because again, we are servicing the youngest kids. They're not going to hold the same level of scrutiny. We want to be as good as the best games, but at the same time, we also have to have limiting budgets. Especially, we developed the first version of Evolytes with Sproti. It's 20 million ISK over 2 years. It took 2.5, but yeah. Is there anything you would like to add to that detrimental moment? But we kind of just sat down and just started brainstorming, and I think that's something we've always been good at.
I think as well, because, that was a huge decision at the time. But moving forward from that decision, knowing in our hearts it really was the right one, has helped us make these decisions quicker and be really agile on what we're doing, really looking at why we're doing it. And yeah, I think it's important to be brave first. It's like ripping a Band-Aid, I think. But all the things that go out of the box and are uncomfortable to begin with, they become more comfortable the more you do it. So I think it's very important to do it right away, especially if you're starting a company. Don't be afraid to do it to begin with, because the deeper you're in, the harder it's going to get.
The investment bias, yeah.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, we set out to change education. If we didn't get the activity from the student, we wouldn't get in the buy-in from the teachers, which we would be yet another lackluster educational product out there that is more or less like all of the other stuff. And we didn't want to be that. So once we got those results, it was not true to our mission. And I think everybody knew that. So building consensus with the team, everybody agreed like, hey, let's just do it. I mean, at worst, we fail, and too bad for Rannis. They spent 20 million or something that they didn't become anything. I mean, that's the risk, right?
Yeah.
But we actually really tried, and it wasn't perfect, but we were a lot closer to where we wanted to be.
And You said that you were a distributed team from the get-go, but for this project, you just you brought the whole team together, locked yourselves in one room physically, and were working together. So how can you, your recommendations for the leaders tuning in, how to decide when is it okay to do work virtually and when the people really need to be in the same room to fight for that pen to write on the whiteboard and so on?
So I think for us, for us, it was a really big decision. You could say this was somewhat of a U-turn. So what the consensus we had built in the beginning, because we started working all in the same place back in 2017, we all knew where we were going and how we wanted to do it. If you're going to make a turn, you need everybody in that room and you need to be able to communicate to each other repeatedly. And you also need to be able to go out and vent. Some of the best ideas, happened whether it was in the swimming pool or that very long drive we took several times.
Actually, during the so we did like a full week, like very like aggressive at the time he's talking about these 2 weeks, and then we knew okay, we were pushing our team, so we went for a road trip as a team, up to Auschwitz, which is what 7.5 hour drive or something.
It's kind of a size you can get.
Right. And we knew like there were some things that we could like utilize the card time for, but there were fun things. And I think that's also something that you need to do. And I think it's because, if the company comes from a psychological background, like how people behave, why they behave like that. So the things that we are applying in the game also applies to the team, also applies to just us as human beings. So maybe it's because we know all the research behind it. So it's also about like balancing, the difficult things and the fun things. And we did do, that was a really good act to go as a team. It's been really rough. We've been working a lot, but we're also having fun and we're also like doing this together. We're in this together. We decided to do this. This is a mess right now, but we decided to do this together. So we're gonna, push through while having fun. But it's going to be a lot of work. And I think it's really important to keep that mentality and keep that balance, because especially when it's hard and you're stressed, and especially as leaders, it's your life, it's your income, it's your all the things, it's easy to get scared and it's easy to want to push him further and feel like stressed out. So you need to like push very hard. But it's there where it's so important for you to also be upbeat and say like, okay, I know like we got ourselves in this mess, or I got us in this mess. Thank you for being here with me, fixing this together, because otherwise we're not moving forward. And I think it's very important for us as leaders to remember, if we are stressed out and we don't manage our own emotions, our whole team is going to be. So we need to really, talk about it. If I'm stressed, I'll talk about it, but I'll also need to try and maintain, happiness levels and like we're in this together. We're going to do this as a team and we're going to have fun.
At the time, it did help. My mother had puppies, so we went for puppy therapy. So we took 8 puppies out. I think we did like 2 or 3 times in the same week. So that was a very good way of keeping those oxytocin levels high. But one thing I want to add to this is, we've had, you tend to be stuck in the same method of operating. For us, this has happened in a couple of times, and I think it happens to everybody. You just get into a rhythm, right? This happened for us also for the sales when we were expanding, when we were trying to go to Sweden and other places, and there was a rhythm to it. But we always had this feeling, okay, we were around the bend. It was going to work, and it never did. So we took this kind of decision again. We were like, hey, this isn't working. We're just going to go to the US, just on a whim, more or less. We had looked at the different markets. We had looked at a bunch of different data. I was like, okay, things are just too slow in Europe. The decision making is broken. We might have a bigger success. Went for a very specialized accelerator called StartEd. They're just for EdTechs, money up front, no equity. Went from there, got a new person in, our head of executive sales now, and with his knowledge and his experience, it changed the entire organization, our approach, everything. So kind of the identity of the organization and how we operate also sometimes changes with new individuals. Sometimes you just need to let go this investment bias that you talked about. We had that in Sweden. We saw there were some reforms that happened over there, political changes that we couldn't foresee. We had 200, 300 schools in the pipeline. It looked really good. And then we just saw what was coming and we cut our losses early. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. We were very lucky. Our investors and board, they backed us up in our decisions. So they trusted us that we have the well-being of the company in mind. And today, we're doing phenomenally well. But because we cut our losses short, we would have been bankrupt by now.
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned, go ahead, it is.
No, I was just going to say, like, that's the thing. Like, when you see a problem arising, like, so there was an election in Sweden that changed everything, and they went right wing, change everything, extreme, back to books, no technology,
cutting budgets.
Like, when you see that starting, and you get this tingly feeling, and like, this isn't feeling right. Listen to it. Because when you're starting a company, you've really been reading up on things. You really know, like, you see these trends. If you have that feeling, listen to it. Maybe not like throw everything away right away, but at least, put eggs in more baskets. Make sure that you can cut something if it starts to feel wrong.
I would say the same thing also applies for your first employees. If things aren't going very well and if you get like this isn't a very good fit, I'll wait it out a little bit. Usually the right answer is just drop it, go next, cut your losses and find somebody that's a better fit. Because if you get that feeling, just listen to your gut. Most of the time it's going to be right. You might lose one or two things, but I think on average, you'll be a lot better for it. It goes both for sales and most things relating to HR and the people that you have, because a lot of the data says that the first few people that you bring on board are make or break for the company. And there's a lot to that.
And it's interesting how you're now combining both things. You're saying about like your gut feeling, listen to that. But also, as you mentioned, you're a research-based company, right? You look at the data, you do the studies, you do the experiments. So like it's fascinating to hear how you're combining both worlds, that data is important and feelings are important. It's not either or. They can live together. They can actually build a symbiosis that actually helps you make the decisions in a good way, guide the company in the right directions.
Definitely. Yeah. I think it's very important listening to it. I mean, if you're just having panic and feelings, that's not good. So if you have itchy feelings, then you go to the data and you read into it and you say, okay, yeah, my itchy feeling is supported by facts. So I'm going to act on them. But yeah, that's true. We do. It is the balancing of the both. So it is important to always maintain that data aspect, because facts are facts. You can't really argue with it. Yeah. And the more you read and the more different knowledge you apply, the better. It's and I think that's something also, like, really talking together as a team, taking in all the different opinions. I think that's something Mathieu has done very well from the beginning, to really, like, even though he really disagrees, as a CEO to begin with, he doesn't like discard it. It will be trickling in his mind, and then he'll think like, okay, what is the things that I dislike about it, and can that be taken out of the picture, and still the idea being an idea, And I think that's very important, is to not discard things, look the facts, try and gather facts, and then, adjusting the original idea to something that's actually approachable and doable.
I think this also applies to everyone. A lot of the time you have an idea of how this should look or be. This also goes, especially because games are a very artistic process. So one of the things that I had to kind of go through with everybody, having worked with artists before, I had some game development background, is the ideas you have in your head and what the illustrator is going to have are going to be two different things, and probably a third different thing based on what you communicated. And usually what I tell them, just leave the artist do their thing. You might point them in some directions, but just don't have a set in stone idea of how it should look. It's going to cost more money. It's going to cost more time, and the end product might not be better. And I think this applies to a lot more areas than just game design, just the ways that you think. Don't have a set in stone idea of what you want for your product if you don't want to improve it. I will disagree with you in the room probably for a week or two, and it'll have to, digest. But we usually end up with something better in the end. And I think that's just all part of the process.
Hey, Genius Theater. I hope you have enjoyed this part of the conversation with Mathieu and Iris. And if you did, then tune in next week because we continue talking about the startup life and especially about the uncomfortable truth about fundraising that many founders really have to know. So tune in next time for the part 2 of this conversation.